Grim Reaper. It was 11 p.m. John Roper, aged 27, lay reading in bed, a book on the myths and legends of Greece. Not everyone's choice, but he always felt he had an intellectual nature, and knowledge, any knowledge, was a useful thing. As the clock neared midnight, he started to yawn. He placed the book upon his bedside cabinet and was about to sleep when he noticed what looked like a black mist seeping under the bedroom door. He didn't move, just watched in fascination as it swirled around the room. But fascination quickly turned to horror. Slowly it began to take on a form, an indistinct shape hovering at the foot of the bed. Slowly but surely it rose upwards. John didn't move. He couldn't move. All bodily senses had stopped. He was desperate to speak, but nothing came out. A body and face began to emerge from the mist that kept fading in and out of focus. "It's time," it said. John pulled up the duvet cover to his face, holding it there while he tried to get control of his thoughts. "Must be dreaming," he muttered. "Maybe it was that last cigarette, or perhaps it was the coffee." Slowly he lowered the cupboard. It was still there. "Who are you?" John managed to force out in a timid voice. "I'm Thanatos," came the thundering reply, and the room shook. John's heart skipped several beats. He knew exactly who Thanatos was. "Better known to you as—" "The Grim Reaper," stammered John. "Yes," said the swirling mist, "the Greek god of death. I'm waiting." "But why me?" whimpered John. "I'm young and healthy." "I know," said the Reaper. "At this time of year we have to balance the books." "I don't understand," said John, trying to engulf himself in the duvet. "What's the date?" asked Thanatos. "The 23rd of December. What difference does that make?" The mist faded out and back in again. "Haven't you noticed at this time of year how many tragedies there are?" John thought for a moment. The Reaper was right. It always seemed that there were major catastrophes just before Christmas. A volcano blowing its top, an earthquake, an air disaster, and all with hundreds of deaths. As I said, just balancing the book. "But I'm just a little old me," John replied. "Why me?" "We was one short this year. Someone down there miscalculated the number of passengers in that air crash, and the black finger seemed to form pointing down there." "But why me?" John replied. "Your name came out of the hat, in a manner of speaking. In the old days, names were mixed up in the huge rotating drum and the name selected. You know, a bit like a drawing a raffle, but not anymore. These days we use a computer with a random name generator, for RNG for short. That's how your name popped out." "You mean," said John, "my name was selected from millions?" Thanatos nodded. "Never happened with the bloody lottery," John mumbled. "That's life," replied the Thanatos, and there was a hideous laugh that made everything in the room vibrate. "Is there no way I can get out of this?" John asked. A sort of smile twisted itself on the Reaper's face and he looked over at the book. "I suppose you've been reading about Question Time and how a very few, have delayed their death." John nodded. "Well, it's true," said the Reaper, "but it hasn't happened for 100 years. But yes, I am obliged to give you a test if you demand it." "I demand it," said John, slightly more brazen than he had been. He thought he heard the Reaper mutter "smart ass," but he wasn't sure. "It's a chance," he thought, "albeit a small one, but a chance." "Okay," said the Reaper more nonchalantly than before, as though it was just a waste of time. "I will ask you general knowledge questions, riddles, that sort of thing, and you must get them all correct, and you must answer quickly. Understood?" John nodded, and then thought of a question of his own. "How long will it last?" 10 minutes, said the Reaper. "Okay, I'm ready." John looked over at his watch on the bedside cabinet. What is the capital of? Correct. Where would you find? Correct. How do you? Correct. As time passed, the mist seemed to fidget. The place looked more grim. Perhaps, thought John, that's how he got his name, derived from losing too many quizzes. Correct. 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 The Reaper looked decidedly unhappy. John looked at the watch. 2 minutes to go. Oh yes, you're good at knowledge, said the Reaper. Very good. Let's try a riddle. What goes on all 4 legs in the morning, on 2 legs at noon, and on 3 legs in the evening? The Reaper looked pleased with himself. John just smiled. He knew this one. It too came from Greek mythology, the riddle of the Sphinx. Good job, he thought, that he'd read the book thoroughly. That's easy, said John. A man who crawls on all 4s as a baby, walks on 2 legs as an adult, and walks with a cane in old age. The Reaper now decidedly looked downcast. Nearly time, said John. There's still 20 seconds, said Thanatos. John was smiling. Not so smart, this Reaper, he thought. Your bath, said the Reaper. It's full of water. I'll give you a teaspoon, a cup and a bucket, he said, anxiously looking over at his watch. What's the quickest way to empty it? 10 seconds. John was now smiling widely. The Reaper was really scraping the barrel, or was it the flask? He laughed to himself. With the bucket, of course, said John, it's much bigger than the other 2. John looked at the watch. 5 seconds to go. No more time for questions. Wrong, bellowed the Reaper, and seemed almost to break out in a jig. The bucket's the quickest, John protested. It's the biggest. Wrong, the Reaper replied. The quickest way to empty the bath is pull the plug. John looked at the watch. He had 3 seconds to live.